In this episode, we are going to create a local database, validate our forms, sign up our users and create a login workflow. In Wappler, click the database icon on the left panel. You will see an empty database connections folder. That's because we don't have a database yet. Select the folder. Click the plus icon above it. A pop-up opens. Enter the database name. Select SQLite in the database drop-down. Click the plus icon beside database file field. Your project file opens. Make sure you are in the root of the project files. Type the name you would like to give your database. Click Save. An SQLite 3 database will be created. You can see it in the database file input. At the bottom of the pop-up, click Test to test your newly created database. Or click Save to continue, while the node packages needed to run our database is installing. Let me introduce you to the structure of our initial tables and how relational database management system works. We create the users table, companies table, and the user and companies link table. Why? Because in our app we need to create users. Users can add their own companies. Users can join a company as an employee, if they are invited. In order to do this, we will create a table that links a user to a company or a company to a user. If you are new to relational database management systems, it may sound complicating to you. Later in this course you would realize why we are making these decisions. When we are done, this is how the structure will look like. To create a table, click on the Tables folder in the Database Manager. Click the plus icon. Enter the table name without spaces. The table will be created with an initial ID field. The unique ID is used to identify every row in our table. Click the table. Click the plus icon to add more columns to the table. You can change each column field type in the Properties panel. When you are done, click the upload icon to save your changes. It is necessary. In the Changes folder in our database, you will see the current change we just created titled with the description we typed when we were creating the change. Add the companies table. In our company user link table, we will create user ID field and company ID field. Each field will be a reference type, referencing the user table and the company table ID. The ID field is unique, that's why we choose it. The on-update and on-delete options in the field properties depends on you. This is the explanation. Cascade if a row from the parent table is deleted or updated. The values of the matching rows in the child table automatically deleted or updated. Restrict if a row from the parent table has a matching row in the child table. MySQL rejects deleting or updating rows in the parent table. Set default when a referenced foreign key is deleted or updated. The columns of all rows referencing that key are set to the default value for that column. Set null if a row from the parent table is deleted or updated. The values of the foreign key column in the child table are set to null. No action is the same as restrict if you don't specify the on-delete and on-update clause. The default action is restrict. In this case, our user table and company table are the parents. The company's user link table is the child. If anything happens to the parent, we may or may not want it to have effect on the child. It's time to continue working on our forms. Change the ID of the sign-up form. Update the sign-up inputs ID. We also need to update the name field of the inputs in the Properties panel. Note: we use the ID field to identify each elements on the page. The ID of each element in a page must be unique. Only input elements have an ID field and a name field. We use the name field to identify our inputs on the server. Each inputs in a particular form must have its own unique name to identify it on the server. We will also update our login form and its inputs. It's time to start working with our backend. In wappler we call it Server Connect. We call the front end App Connect. We access our backend in the Workflows panel. This is where we declare our app logic. There's a lot to see here. You will get to know more about them as we progress in our tutorials. First, let's work with security providers in the globals. We add a security provider. It handles our app security. It also handles our user login and also stores our logged in user ID. Since our users are stored in the database, we choose Database in the Type properties. Click Users and Permissions. Select the table storing our user details. Choose the ID field as the identity. Select your username and password field. When you are done, set the expiry days. This is the number of days our user login will be stored. We will start creating our API actions. Select API in the Server Actions panel. Add a Users folder. Add a Sign Up API action in the folder. Make sure all your API actions name don't have spaces. To use our form inputs in the backend. There are many ways to do it. One of the easiest ways is to import them. To import our form inputs, click the Inputs folder in the API action. Click Folder icon in the linked page field. Open the Views folder in your project files. Select the page and click Select. If your form is in a layout page, then you have to open the Layouts folder and select the layout page. After you are done, select the form you want to use in the form input drop list and click Import from Form. You will see your form inputs names populated in the post variable in the Inputs folder. This is because we are posting values to the server. To create a new user, we need to insert a user in our database. In our API action, right-click on Steps. Search for Insert. Click it. In the right panel, click on Insert Options. Click the drop-down at the top of the pop-up and select our user table. All the fields will be loaded in the UI. Double-click on each field value and select the lightning bolt that appears and select post value that is appropriate for the field. Choose the Confirm Password post value for the password field. We cannot store password in a plain text. We need to encrypt it. Double-click on password field value. Select the Confirm Password post value. Click on the wand. Click the Confirm Password post value and click the plus icon. In the menu, select Cryptography. Choose Generate SHA-512 hash. Enter the salt value. Click Select on all pop-ups and we are done. Now we have secured our user's password. There are many ways you can encrypt user's password. This is one of those ways. The salt value we entered is for securing the password. We will use it to log in users. You can always go back to change it. Before we connect our form to the back end, we need to validate the Confirm Password input with the password input. To make sure our user know if they mistyped their password. To do this, copy the ID of the password field, then click Confirm Password input. In its properties, add a validation. Click on Other. Select Equal to. In the Equal to value field, paste the password input ID. You can change the message if you want. To connect our sign-up form, select the sign-up form. In its properties, click Make Server Connect Form. The Server Connect property will show. Under the action input, click Select Server Action. In the pop-up, click the sign-up action we created earlier. When you are done, select our Sign Up button. In its properties, change its type to Submit. So it will submit the form when we click it. We need to show a notification to confirm if our form is working. Add a toast on the page. Select the form. In its properties, add a dynamic event. Click Server Connect, then select Success. Note: If we make our form an API form, we will do the same workflow. If we are connecting to our backend, we make our form a server connect form. If we are connecting to an API, we make our form an API form. In the success event, click the play icon. Search for the toast we added. Click its show property. Customize the message and add a title. Click select when you are done. Now we can test run our form. We can also add validation in our backend. We use the same workflow, except we will use input names instead of ID, because we use input names in the backend. Let's add required validation to our inputs, so our users don't submit empty forms. Let's also make sure our users don't submit duplicate email addresses. In our sign-up API action, add a validate data before the database insert step. We will use the validate data to validate our users' email addresses. Click Validate Options. In the pop-up, click the plus icon. A new validation will be created for us. In the expression input, click the lightning bolt. Select email from the post variable. Add a validation rule. Select database. Then click does not exist in database. This will search our database for the email address supplied. If it exists, our API action will stop running. If it does not exist, our API action will continue running. See it as a condition for our API action to run. That's why we place it above the database insert step. Select our users table and select the email column. In the linked field, type the email input name. This will alert the user that the email exists in our database. Change our password input type to password. Open our app in the browser to test our sign-up. If the email already exists in the database, we will see a message under the email input. Same thing goes for the password inputs. If they are not equal, we will see a message under the inputs. This is because of the validations we applied. If the supplied informations are correct and accepted, we will see a success notification. We will now create our login API action. Add a new API action. Name it login. Input the login form just like we imported our sign-up form. Add a security login step. Bind the email in the post variable to the username field. Bind the password in the post variable to the password. Encrypt it with SHA-512 hash algorithm. And enter the salt you entered for the sign-up encryption. This is because we encrypted our passwords in the database. We need to let our security provider know how to handle our login. Make our login form a Server Connect form. Select the login API action we just created as its server action. Add a success dynamic event. Show a toast notification when the user logged in successfully. Also add an unauthorized dynamic event and show a toast notification if a user typed in the wrong login details. Awesome. Our login form works. However, changing the email letters from uppercase to lowercase throws a login error. Why? Because our database email field is case sensitive. To deal with this, we need to format the user email on sign up and format the email on login. This way, regardless of our users entered their email in the inputs, it will be reformatted in the backend. Format the email input value in the user insert and login action to lowercase. Then delete all users in the database. Now our users can log in regardless of how they enter their email. Because we formatted all entered email in the backend to lowercase. Now we proceed to add our company and our users' company's link. Rename our user insert. Add another insert after it. This time we insert a company. Bind the company name in the post variable to the company field. Click OK. Add another insert. Choose the company's user link table. Choose the identity response from the user and insert step for user ID. And choose the identity response from the company and insert step for company ID. This is because the user ID field and company ID field will be referencing our user table and company table ID fields. Congrats! You just created your first database relationship in this lesson series. Add a login step to log the user in after sign up. Create a logged-in user query API action. First we need to get the logged-in user companies list. We first add security provider step. This is because every time a user logs in, a session is created for them and their ID is stored in that session. In order to retrieve our current user ID, we use security provider. We will use it a lot in future lessons. Add a query step. Name it. Click the query button. In the pop-up, click the plus icon. Select company's user link table. Click the plus icon again. Select the company table. Another pop-up opens. Here you need to make sure the ID in the company's table equals the company ID in the company's user table. Make the join type an inner join. Click OK. Add the company name and ID column to the query. Click the Condition tab. Make the user ID in the company's user table equals to the identity response of the security provider. You are done. Add another query after the security step. Name it. Make it a single query. Click Query Builder. Select our users table. Add first name and last name to the query. Make the users table ID field equal to the identity response of the security provider step. We make our query a single query because we only have a single logged in user. In the App Template Layout page, add a Server Connect element. Change its ID. In its properties, select the logged-in user action we just created. Select the username placeholder paragraph. In its properties, add a dynamic attribute. Click Display and select Inner Text. Bind the inner text to the Server Connect query first name and last name. Select the drop-down Select element. Clear its placeholder options. Bind its data source to the company's user link query in the Server Connect element. If you noticed, the icon of query user is different from the icon of the company's user link query. This is because the query user is a single query. That is why we bind the username paragraph to it directly, while company's user link query is a multiple query. Because our user can have multiple companies, we always loop through this kinds of query. Always pay attention to the icons. It's how you know what type of data you are dealing with. Bind the text field to the company name. Bind the value field to the ID. Change the select element ID. In the index page, add a browser element. Select our sign up form. In its success event, add a browser go-to step. Choose the dashboard page. Do the same for the login form. The browser element allows us to navigate to internal and external routes. But it's not limited to routing only. When we log in or sign up, if we receive a success response, we will see a success notification and we will be redirected to the dashboard page. Awesome. It works as we expected. And logged in user details are also displaying on the page. You did very well by completing this lesson. In the next lesson, I will be showing you how to allow only logged in users to access our page. If you enjoyed this lesson, like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching.